And now, live from the studios of Freedom's Phoenix, Ernest Hancock.
Yeah, just another radio show out of Phoenix. Here on Declare Your Independence with me, Ernest Hancock, each and every day on the LRN.FM network here at Freedom's, with an S, freedomsphoenix.com farm. You know, what we want to do is continue where we left off, and I made some notes that, for Dean and I to get back into this because, what was prep then in the 10, 15 years ago, and what is it now? Has it changed? I need to get my, my survival food gunny, whatever, right after I get my a smartphone. I mean, what are we dealing with? A week from tomorrow, Saturday, the first Saturday of the month is when we have the Arizona Breakfast Club. It's been around 40 years. And we, inherited this from, some great people that wanted us to continue the tradition. And they decided to go with the libertarians instead of the conservatives because they went down the dark side. So what happened was we've been able to do a lot of great programs. Well, what we're doing this next week is ham radio. Mutual friend of ours, Tim Weaver, that used to have a company. He made some bank during build up the war in Afghanistan and Iraq because they weren't supplying the troops, and he had a thing called Practical Tactical. It wasn't firearms or ammunition, but it was everything else. All kinds of supplies, for carrying water, ammo, vest, heck, even armor. I think he had some stuff. He just all kinds of stuff. And people were buying it from him to send to their husband, their son, their daughter. It was amazing how little they had in protect. They didn't care. These are all about how much money we can make with the excuse of firing a missile somewhere. So it was upon the soldiers and their family themselves to supply the people over there with what they needed. And he made money doing it. So he's also, involved in, preparations for different things. But so he's the guy I go to that we're going to give a presentation on ham radios. Now, we'll get to that because I want to make sure we talk about that because communication is going to be a big thing when the bad guys just turn off the DOD, Department of Defense internet. They go, oh, I'm sorry, it was ours, didn't we tell you? So it's a national security thing, you're not allowed to talk to each other. So I want Dean to, kind of give the idea back when they were, that's what got them in trouble. They were out prepping, getting things and blowing stuff up and, not being as secret as they should have been, and a man came in to make a big giant deal. Oh, see, they're out there, learning how to make explosives and they got to go to jail, conspiring to teach people. Literally, that's what they got it for. So I want to talk about what was considered prep then and how has it changed to now?
Well, the fact of the matter is that if you're talking, it depends on what future you're thinking you may need to expect. We were concerned for ourselves about potential future conflict with the government for various different reasons. We won't get into those motivations, but with that end result we were concerned about being able to effectively combat, or at least defend against in combat, a government, and that's not an easy thing to do. But the very nature of warfare today is warfare is a come-as-you-are affair. It's not like back during the Napoleonic times where everybody saw it coming and they had a year or a season to gather up food, gather up arms, whatever. You're either ready or you're not when it goes down. So, and that's kind of the same now with everything else that takes place so fast in our society. When Hurricane Katrina happened, when the tsunami in Japan happened, you either had the ability to get out and get away, or you didn't. And if you had to stay, you either had supplies or you didn't. There wasn't any time to go to the store and fight all the other throngs of people who were trying to buy up all the water, buy up all the food. So, there are some things that are universal. You just need to always have a little bit of everything for an emergency. But in our interconnected world, like you mentioned with the internet, one of the things that is new to preparation from days of old is communication. The level of communication you needed to preserve 100 years ago was, am I still going to be able to ride my horse down the road to see my neighbor and buy some eggs from his chickens? But today, like you say, if we don't have an internet, if cell phones go down, how do we talk to the world? How do we call for help if we're willing to ask for it? And one of the things we did, we got into ham radio on a limited basis. It's very technical. I won't go into it all, but a very simple thing we did is we acquired some radios which transmitted on one channel and received on another. So that if anybody happened upon your conversation on the airwaves playing around with their scanner or whatever, they only would get half the conversation. And that's if you're conversing in the open without code. And it's a very simple preparation, but that's a leg up over probably anybody else on your block. How many other people on your block who may have a gun, may have some food in the pantry, has a radio that they can even talk to anybody else who has a similar radio? There are radios out there that the more money you spend, the more you get, where you can talk to almost any radio if you're willing to spend the money. You just need to look into what has been useful tools in previous disasters of all kinds and make sure you have access to those. I mean, we were reading one website recently. We were discussing this a couple weeks ago, how a guy who lived through the war in Yugoslavia in the 90s.
That was fascinating.
They lived on a farm. They were kind of away from all the conflict, and they figured, we're going to be able to ride this out. We're just keeping unto ourselves. No one's going to bother us. But then people came along to bother them.
Because they had goodies. You guys were prepped, and they said, thank you very much. It's ours.
Yeah, and what they finally realized when they had to flee with literally nothing but the clothes on their backs, what they were concerned about then was, can we find wood to make a fire? Can we find a well that isn't poisoned so we can drink? And knowing the skills of how to determine if water is poisonous or not, where you might find it, those are valuable skills. Skills may be the most valuable thing you can have to survive the future.
It was what he's talking about. It was very interesting. It was a gentleman who's going, now, all you guys prepping for all this stuff, you don't really know exactly what's coming on. I mean, you're coming across some information that is useful, and it's good that you got, blah, blah, blah. But he goes, let me tell you, when it comes down to it, it's going to be about breathing in and out. It's going to be about food, water, being able to defend against those that would take it from you, hiding it, being off the grid, doing it. He said a lot of times in Yugoslavia that there was, Sarajevo, I guess was the main where it was going on. He said the people, as they were being sniped, all these guys were shooting them as they're going out for water. What they did is the people that were most effective at surviving were the ones that lived in apartments, and in the center courtyard, they were able to dig a well. And they had enough fuel from nearby, right behind it or something with some wood, some woods, or they were dismantling parts of the apartment complex, trying to survive long enough just to hold out. And they were supplying themselves with whatever food that they had and accumulated, and then they have little parties, raiding parties, or whatever, go out. And their whole thing was just about surviving. So I look at a lot of the survival blogs and so on. And we started putting survivalblog.com or whatever on Freedom's Phoenix Live, because there's a lot of great stuff. A lot of people send us stuff to put up, and we've been putting up a lot of their stuff. And their big thing is it kind of shifted away from, the firearm aspect of it, is to just, keeping your body at, surviving temperature and hydrating and food.
Well, along those lines, a wonderful article I read just yesterday, literally, the fellow was commenting, he runs a shooting school, and all kinds of people come and go through his school, some military, some civilian, and inevitably topics like this come up where they say, oh boy, if the excrement ever hits the fan, I'm heading to the mountains, get away from all the crazy people. Well, he runs a school in Southern Oregon at about 5,000 feet. And a lot of these guys who come to his school, they're from cities. And he says, listen, have you ever been to the mountains? Have you ever lived in the mountains? And I don't mean in a community with running water and all. I mean, you ever had to survive like in a log cabin? It ain't easy. And you're going to just, with what you can pack on your back or in your car, take off to the mountains to live for years. You're going to die. And we're all going to die. There's a debate right now in the survival community about, should you bug out or should you bug in? Should you stay? Should you go?
We have on the front page, it's 2 letters regarding cattle raising basics from somebody. They're going, hey, man, what about cattle raising? Other things about stocking up on, certain things. How to get your wife on board.